The long silence, the darkness between galaxies was absolute. No stars pierced this emptiness. No worlds offered shelter. There was only the cold and the silence and the slow crawl of time, across 60,000 years. Commander Yara Okonkwo stood at the observation deck of the Eternal Dawn. Staring into that darkness, she was a tall woman, with skin the color of burnished copper and eyes that held the weight of centuries. At 93 years old, she was barely middle-aged by the standards of her people. Human bodies had changed during the long exile. They lasted longer now. They needed less. They remembered more. Behind her, the soft hum of the ship's systems provided the only sound. The Eternal Dawn was one of 12,000 vessels that made up the Void Fleet. Each ship was a city unto itself, carrying thousands of humans through the endless night between galaxies. Commander.
Oh.
The voice belonged to Lieutenant Chen Wiming, her tactical officer. He was young, barely 60, with the sharp features and steady hands of someone born for war. The navigators confirm our position. We're 3 days from the outer edge of the Milky Way. Yara did not turn around. 3 days, she repeated softly. After 60,000 years, we're 3 days from home. Home. The word felt strange on her tongue. She had never seen Earth. No living human had. Earth was a story, a legend, a wound that had never healed. Every child in the fleet learned its history before they could walk. They learned about blue oceans and green forests. They learned about mountains that touched the sky and cities that sparkled with light. They learned about the day the Vorn came. The Vorn Imperium had arrived without warning. Their warships had filled Earth's sky like a plague of metal locusts. They had demanded submission. When humanity refused to kneel, they had burned the world. Yara closed her eyes and let the old memories wash over her. Not her memories, of course. These were inherited memories passed down through genetic modification and neural sharing across 3,000 generations. She could feel the heat of the burning cities. She could hear the screams of the dying. She could taste the ash that had once been forests and oceans and dreams. 8 billion humans had died in a single day. The Vorn had been thorough. They had not merely conquered Earth. They had sterilized it. They had stripped away its atmosphere and boiled its seas. They had left nothing but a scorched rock spinning around a yellow sun. But some had escaped. 7-generation ships, barely completed and never tested, had fled into the void. They had carried 40,000 humans away from the dying world, away from the galaxy itself, into the darkness between stars, where no one would follow. The Vorn had pursued them for years. They had hunted them across light years of empty space, but eventually they had given up. They had assumed the fleeing humans would die in the void. What species could survive without a homeworld? What civilization could endure in the emptiness between galaxies? They had underestimated humanity. Show me the fleet, Yara said. The observation deck's walls transformed into a massive display. 12,000 ships appeared, each one rendered in perfect detail. They ranged from massive carrier vessels to sleek warships to the great generation arcs that had carried humanity through the darkness. Together, they formed a force unlike anything the galaxy had seen in 60 millennia. 17 million souls, Chen Wiming said quietly. All descended from those original 40,000 refugees. Yara nodded. 17 million humans. It was a fraction of what Earth's population had been. But these were not the same humans who had died under Vorn weapons. These were something new. Something forged in the crucible of survival. The long exile had changed humanity in ways their ancestors could never have imagined. With no planets to land on, they had learned to live entirely in space. Their ships had become their worlds. Their technology had advanced by necessity. Every innovation focused on survival and efficiency. Human bodies had been carefully modified over countless generations. They lived 3 times as long as their ancestors. They could survive on less food, less water, less air. Their minds had been sharpened to think in terms of centuries rather than years. They had become patient. They had become methodical. They had become very, very dangerous. Any response to our approach? Yara asked. None that we've detected, Chen Weiming replied. Our stealth systems are holding. The Vorn have no idea we're coming. Yara allowed herself a small smile. The Vorn had ruled the galaxy for 60,000 years. They had grown comfortable in their dominance. Their border defenses were weak. Their fleets were concentrated around their core worlds. They had forgotten what it meant to face a real threat. They had forgotten about humanity, Commander. A new voice spoke from behind her, Dr. Amara Sisi. The fleet's chief historian stepped onto the observation deck. She was an elderly woman, well over 200 years old, with white hair and eyes that had seen more than most. The council is assembled. They're waiting for your address. Yara turned away from the stars at last. Then let's not keep them waiting. The council chamber was the largest space on the Eternal Dawn. It could hold 10,000 humans. And today it was filled to capacity. Representatives from every ship in the fleet had gathered, either in person or via holographic projection. They sat in silence, waiting for their commander to speak. Yara walked to the central platform and looked out at her people. She saw old faces and young faces. She saw hope and fear and determination. She saw 60,000 years of survival written in every pair of eyes. 3 days, she began, her voice carrying across the chamber. In 3 days, we will enter the Milky Way galaxy. We will return to the space our ancestors fled 60,000 years ago. We will face the empire that destroyed our homeworld and tried to erase our species from existence. She paused, letting the words sink in. I know what you're feeling. I feel it too. The anger, the grief, the burning need for justice. Every one of us carries the memory of Earth's destruction. Every one of us has grown up with stories of what the Vorn took from us. We have waited 3,000 generations for this moment. Yara's hands curled into fists at her sides. The Vorn think we're extinct. They think humanity is just a footnote in their history books. A primitive species they exterminated when their empire was young. They have no idea what we've become. They have no idea what's coming. A murmur ran through the crowd. Yara could feel the energy building, the collective resolve of millions of humans focused on a single purpose. But I want to be clear about something, she continued. We are not here for blind revenge. We are not here to become what they were. The Vorn destroyed our world because they believed that strength gave them the right to do whatever they wanted. They were wrong. And if we become like them, if we let our anger turn us into monsters, then they will have truly destroyed us. She looked across the faces of her people, searching for understanding. We are here for justice. We are here to make the Vorn answer for their crimes. We are here to show the galaxy that you cannot simply erase a species and forget about it. But we will do this as humans. We will fight with honor. We will show mercy when mercy is warranted. We will remember who we are and who we choose to be. Yara raised her voice for the final words. 60,000 years ago, our ancestors fled into the darkness with nothing but hope and determination. They survived against impossible odds. They built something new from the ashes of the old. They never forgot where they came from, and they never stopped believing that one day we would return. She spread her arms wide, encompassing the entire chamber. That day has come. We are the children of Earth. We are the legacy of those who refused to die. We are humanity, and we have come home. The chamber erupted in cheers. The sound rolled over Yara like a wave, carrying with it 60,000 years of waiting, of hoping, of preparing for this moment. As she stepped down from the platform, Dr. Cisse approached her. The old historian's eyes were shining with tears. Your great-great-grandmother would be proud, she said softly. Yara nodded, feeling the weight of all those generations pressing down on her shoulders. I hope so, she replied. I hope I can honor what they sacrificed. 3 days later, the Void Fleet crossed into the Milky Way galaxy. They moved like ghosts, their advanced stealth systems hiding them from every sensor the Vorn possessed. 12,000 ships carrying 17 million humans, slipping silently through the stars toward an empire that had no idea it was about to face its past. Commander Yara Okonkwo watched the galaxy grow larger on her viewscreen. Somewhere in that swirl of light was a small yellow sun. Orbiting that sun was a dead world that had once been called Earth. She was coming home at last, and the Vorn were about to learn that some things cannot be destroyed. Some things survive. Some things come back. Humanity had returned. The reckoning begins. The Vorn military installation at Sector 9 was considered impregnable. It housed 5,000 warships, supported 200,000 personnel, and protected one of the main trade routes into the Imperium's core territories. Admiral Cressvorn, the station's commander, believed nothing in the galaxy could threaten his domain. He was about to be proven wrong. The attack came at the darkest hour of the station's cycle. There was no warning, no approaching fleet on sensors, no diplomatic ultimatum. One moment, space around the station was empty. The next, it was filled with ships. They appeared from nowhere, their hulls black as the void itself. They didn't match any design in the Vorn database. They moved with impossible speed, their maneuvers defying the physics that governed Vorn vessels. Admiral Cressvorn barely had time to reach his command center before the first shots were fired. Weapons that the Vorn had never encountered tore through the station's shields like they weren't there. Armor that could withstand the heat of a star's core melted in seconds. All ships, engage. Cressvorn roared. Destroy those intruders. The Vorn fleet surged forward. 5,000 of the most advanced warships in the Imperium, crewed by soldiers who had trained for centuries. They should have been unstoppable. They lasted less than an hour. The enemy ships danced through the Vorn fleet like predators among prey. Their weapons struck with perfect accuracy, targeting engines, weapon systems, command centers. Every shot hit exactly where it needed to. Every maneuver was precisely calculated. The Vorn ships that tried to fire back found their shots, passing through empty space. The enemy was simply too fast, too agile, too coordinated. Who are they? Cressvorn demanded, watching his fleet being systematically dismantled. What species fights like this? His tactical officer's scales had gone pale with shock. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the attacking fleet. On screen, a face appeared on the central display. It was a human face, though Cressvorn didn't recognize the species at first. Why would he? Humans had been extinct for 60,000 years. I am Commander Yara Okonkwo of the Human Void Fleet, the woman said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Your station is surrounded. Your fleet is destroyed. You may surrender, or you may die. The choice is yours. Cressvorn stared at the face on his screen. Humans. The ancient records mentioned them. A primitive species the Imperium had eliminated during its early expansion. They had been extinct for millennia. That's impossible, he whispered. We get that a lot, Yara replied. You have 5 minutes to begin evacuation procedures. Any ship that powers down and signals surrender will be spared. Any ship that resists will be destroyed. Make your choice. The transmission ended. Cressvorn looked around at his officers, seeing his own disbelief reflected in their faces. Order the evacuation, he said quietly. All hands, abandon station. It was the only sensible decision. Within the hour, the station was under human control. Across the Imperium, similar scenes played out. The human fleet struck 12 major installations simultaneously, coordinating attacks across thousands of light years with perfect precision. Every target was military. Every attack was successful. And everywhere they went, humans left the same message. We are the children of Earth. We have returned. On the capital world of the Vorn Imperium, Supreme Commander Drelvax received the news with growing horror. He was old, nearly 2,000 years, and he remembered things that younger Vorn had forgotten. He remembered the records of humanity's destruction. He remembered the debates about whether the fleeing ships should be pursued. He remembered the decision to let them die in the void. They survived, he said, staring at the reports flooding his command center. 60,000 years in the darkness, and they survived. Impossible, said Fleet Marshal Krenvax. No species could endure that long without a homeworld. They must have found planets somewhere. Our scouts have surveyed the region between galaxies for millennia, Drelvax replied. There are no habitable worlds out there. Nothing but cold and emptiness. And yet here they are, with a fleet larger than anything we've faced in 10,000 years. Using technology we can't even understand, pulled up the combat data from the initial attacks. The numbers were devastating. Human ships were faster, more maneuverable, and better armed than anything in the Vorn fleet. Their weapons operated on principles the Imperium's scientists couldn't identify. Their shields absorbed energy that should have vaporized them. They've had 60,000 years to prepare for this, Drelvax said. 60,000 years with nothing to do but survive and evolve and plan their return. We gave them all the time they needed, and we must destroy them now, Krenvax insisted. Mobilize the entire fleet. Every ship we have. You're not listening, Drelvax said softly. Look at these reports. They're not just winning battles. They're conducting a surgical campaign. Military targets only. They're accepting surrenders. They're treating prisoners according to laws of war we barely remember. Does that sound like a species bent on mindless revenge? Krenvax frowned. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that the humans aren't trying to destroy us. They're trying to make us answer for what we did. There's a difference. Ambassador Drelvax had been watching the exchange in silence. He was Drelvax's younger brother, nearly 1,800 years old, and he had spent his life studying ancient history. He knew more about humanity's destruction than anyone else in the Imperium. They kept records, he said quietly. The humans. They passed down the memory of what we did to them across 3,000 generations. Can you imagine carrying that burden for 60 millennia? Can you imagine the discipline it would take to wait that long and still fight with honor when the moment finally came? He stood and walked to the central display, bringing up images from the captured stations. The humans had left holographic projectors running, showing Earth before and after its destruction. Beautiful and alive. Dead and burning. They want us to remember, Drelvax said. They want us to understand what we took from them. They want us to face what we did. And then? Krenvax demanded. After we face it, then what? They destroy us. I don't think so, Drelvax replied. If they wanted to destroy us, they would have attacked civilian targets. They would have bombed our cities. They would have done to us exactly what we did to them. Instead, they're fighting a clean war. They're giving us chances to surrender. They're showing restraint that we never showed them. He turned to face his brother. I want to talk to them. I want to understand what they really want. Drelvax was quiet for a long moment. That might be the only chance we have, he finally said. Make contact. Arrange a meeting. Find out if there's any way to end this before more people die. 3 days later, Ambassador Drelvax found himself aboard a human vessel for the first time. The ship was unlike anything he had seen. Its corridors were clean and efficient, designed for people who had lived their entire lives in space. The humans who escorted him moved with quiet confidence, their eyes never leaving him. He was brought to a conference room where Commander Yara Okonkwo waited. She was standing by a window that looked out at the stars, her back to him. When she turned, Drelvax was struck by the intensity in her eyes. Ambassador, she said. Thank you for coming, Commander, he replied. I had to see for myself. The species we destroyed 60,000 years ago, standing before me alive and victorious. It seems like something from a dream. Or a nightmare, Yara said, depending on your perspective. Why? Drelvax asked. Why now? Why come back after all this time? Yara was quiet for a moment. Because we never forgot, she finally said. Because every human child learns the story of Earth before they can walk. Because my people have carried the weight of that destruction for 3,000 generations, and it was time to finally do something about it. And what will you do? Drelvax pressed. Destroy us, as we destroyed you? Burn our worlds, and kill our people? Is that what you're expecting? It's what we deserve, Yara shook her head slowly. Maybe, but that's not what we want. Becoming what you were wouldn't honor the memory of those who died. It would betray them. She walked to the table and sat down, gesturing for Drelvax to do the same. I want to take you somewhere, she said. There's something you need to see. Something we both need to see. Where? Yara's eyes met his. Earth. I want you to stand on the world you destroyed and tell me what you see. Drelvax felt a cold chill run through his scales. Why? Because I've never seen it either, Yara admitted. No living human has set foot on Earth. We've been waiting 60,000 years to go home. I think it's time. And I think you should be there when we do. Ashes and stars Earth hung in the void like a wound that had never healed. Commander, Terra. Okonkwo stood at the observation deck of the Eternal Dawn. Watching the planet grow larger as her ship approached, she had prepared herself for this moment her entire life. Every human in the fleet had, but nothing could truly prepare you for seeing the corpse of your homeworld. The planet was gray now. It's covered in dust and ash that had settled over 60,000 years. There were no oceans, no clouds, no signs of life. The atmosphere had been stripped away by weapons that humanity's ancestors could never have understood. All that remained was a dead rock spinning slowly around a yellow sun. It was beautiful once, said Ambassador Threlvax from beside her. The elderly Vorn had barely spoken during the journey, lost in his own thoughts. The records show a world of blue water and green land, covered with millions of species of life. It was probably one of the most beautiful worlds in the galaxy. And your people burned it, Yara said quietly. Yes. Threlvax's voice was heavy with something that might have been shame. We burned it because we could. Because we thought our strength gave us the right. Because we didn't see humans as people worthy of existence. The ship descended through the thin remnants of Earth's atmosphere. They landed on what had once been the coast of a great ocean, in the ruins of a city that records identified as Cape Town. The buildings were gone, reduced to foundations barely visible beneath layers of dust. But the shape of the land remained, and if you knew what to look for, you could still see where the streets had been. Yara stepped off the landing ramp onto the surface of Earth, the first human to touch the homeworld in 60,000 years. She wore an environmental suit, the surface still too harsh for unprotected life, but she could feel the ground beneath her boots. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her. Behind her, dozens of humans followed. Senior officers, historians, representatives from every ship in the fleet. They spread out across the landing site in silence, some kneeling to touch the ground, others standing motionless as tears ran down their faces. Threlvax descended the ramp last, his movements slow and careful. He looked around at the devastation that stretched to every horizon and felt the full weight of what his species had done. I've studied this for centuries, he said. I thought I understood. I was wrong. Yara walked to a small rise that overlooked the landing site. From here, she could see the distant outline of what had once been mountains, now worn down by millennia of wind and dust. She could see the empty basin where an ocean had once held countless forms of life. She could see the death of everything humanity had been. She pulled a small stone from her pocket. It was smooth from 60,000 years of human hands holding it. A piece of Earth that had traveled across the void between galaxies. Passed down from generation to generation. It's belonged to my grandmother's grandmother's grandmother, she said, going back 3,000 generations. It was carried aboard one of the original ships that fled the destruction. Every leader of my family has held it, waiting for the day we could bring it home. She knelt and pressed the stone into the dust. It had traveled farther than any object in human history. Now it was back where it belonged. The Vorn Imperium killed 8 billion humans on this world, Ara continued, her voice carrying across the silent gathering. They burned the oceans and poisoned the air. They tried to erase humanity from existence because we refused to kneel. They nearly succeeded. She stood and turned to face the assembled humans. Against every odd, against every expectation, we survived. We spent 60,000 years in the darkness, between galaxies with nothing but our ships and our memories and our determination. We built something new from the ashes of the old. We became something the Vorn could never have imagined. Her eyes found Threlvax in the crowd. The ambassador stood apart from the humans, his scales pale and his eyes fixed on the ground. And now we have a choice to make, Yara said. We have defeated the Vorn in battle. We have proven that we are stronger than they are. We could destroy their empire as they destroyed our world. We could make them feel every ounce of pain that our ancestors felt. We could have our revenge. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. But that is not what we will do. A murmur ran through the assembled humans. Some looked confused. Others looked angry, but most simply waited, trusting their commander. Revenge would make us like them, Yara continued. It would prove that the only lesson we learned from our suffering was how to inflict suffering on others. It would betray every generation that came before us. Every human who survived and struggled and hoped for a future better than the past. She walked toward Threlvax, stopping a few feet away from the Vorn ambassador. I didn't bring you here to threaten you, she told him. I brought you here so you could see what your people did. So you could understand the weight of the crime that was committed on this spot. So you could go back to your leaders and tell them what you witnessed. And what will you demand? Threlvax asked. Reparations. Territory. The destruction of our military? Yara shook her head. We will demand justice. Your people will publicly acknowledge what was done to Earth. You will teach your children the truth of what happened here. You will remember humanity not as a primitive species you exterminated, but as a people who survived against impossible odds and chose mercy when they had earned the right to vengeance. She turned back to face the assembled humans. And we will build a new home. Not here. Earth is a memorial now, a reminder of what was lost and what was preserved. But somewhere in this galaxy, we will find a world where humans can walk under open skies again. We will plant forests and fill oceans. We will build cities that touch the clouds. We will become what we always should have been. Lieutenant Chen Wimming stepped forward. Commander, some will say this is weakness. That we should make the Vorn pay for what they did. Some will say that, Yara agreed, but they're wrong. It takes no strength to destroy. Any species can learn to kill. True strength is choosing a different path when the easy path is violence. True strength is building a future instead of burning down the past. She looked at Threlvax once more. Go back to your people. Tell them what you saw here. Tell them that humanity has returned, and we remember everything. Tell them that we are offering them a choice, justice or war. I hope they choose wisely. Ambassador bowed his head. I will tell them. And for what it's worth, Commander, I am sorry. I know that word is inadequate. I know it cannot undo what was done. But I am sorry. I know, Yara said softly. That's a start. 1 week later, the Vorn Imperium accepted humanity's terms. The Supreme Commander himself appeared in a galaxy-wide broadcast. Acknowledging the destruction of Earth and the crime committed against humanity, schools across the Imperium began teaching the true history of what had happened 60,000 years ago. Humanity was granted a sector of space to call their own. Centered around a world they named New Earth, it was smaller than the original, with strange purple skies and 3 small moons, but it had oceans and forests and mountains. It had room to grow. The first humans descended to the surface on a bright morning, when all 3 moons were visible in the sky. They were the first humans to breathe fresh air in 60,000 years. They were the first humans to feel grass beneath their feet, to hear birds singing in trees, to see a horizon that wasn't made of metal. Commander Yara Okonkwo stood among them, watching children run across a meadow for the first time in their lives. She was smiling, a real smile that reached her eyes. Dr. Amara Sise approached her, leaning heavily on a walking stick. The old historian was nearly 300 now, and she had lived just long enough to see this day. You did it, Sise said. You brought us home. Yara shook her head. We all did it. Everyone who survived the long exile, everyone who kept the memory alive, everyone who believed we would see this day. She looked up at the purple sky, so different from the blue skies in the old stories. It's not Earth. It will never be Earth. But it's ours. What happens now? Sise asked. We live, Yara replied. We build and grow and explore. We become part of this galaxy instead of hiding from it. We show everyone who we are and what we can do. She turned to face the old historian, and we remember. We never forget where we came from, or what we survived, or why we chose mercy instead of revenge. We carry Earth in our hearts, even as we build something new. In orbit above New Earth, the ships of the Void Fleet waited. 12,000 vessels that had carried humanity through 60,000 years of darkness. They would never be needed for war again. Instead, they would become museums and memorials. Reminders of the long journey that had brought humanity home. On the bridge of the eternal dawn, a holographic display showed Earth as it had been before the Vorn attack. Blue oceans, green countenance, white clouds, beautiful and alive. The image rotated slowly, a reminder of what had been lost and what had been preserved. Beneath it, a simple inscription glowed in letters of gold. We survived. We remembered. We returned. We chose to be better. And across the galaxy, in Vorn schools and human settlements and everywhere in between, a new generation learned the story of Earth. They learned about destruction and exile, about survival and return, about revenge and mercy. They learned that some things are more powerful than hatred. They learned that humanity would never be forgotten again. The seeds of tomorrow, the first rain on New Earth, came 37 days after the initial landing. Commander Yara Okonkwo stood in an open field, her face turned toward the purple sky, letting the drops fall on her skin. Around her, thousands of humans did the same. Many were weeping. Most had never felt rain before. For 60,000 years, water had been recycled and rationed. Every drop was precious. Every shower was measured and timed. But here, on this strange world with its 3 moons and violet clouds, water fell freely from the sky. It soaked into the ground. It ran in streams down hillsides. It gathered in pools that reflected the alien stars.
Aye.
It's cold, said a young girl standing nearby. She was perhaps 12 years old, born on a ship, raised in metal corridors. She held her hands out, catching raindrops like they were jewels. Why is it cold? Yara smiled down at her. Because it comes from high up in the sky, where the air is colder. The water forms into clouds, and when the clouds get heavy enough, the water falls. I learned that in school, the girl said. But learning it and feeling it are different things. Yes, Yara agreed. They certainly are. The settlement around them was still primitive by the standards of their fleet technology. Simple structures made from local materials arranged in careful patterns around a central plaza. The humans had decided to build slowly, to learn the rhythms of their new world before imposing too much upon it. They had waited 60,000 years for a home. They could wait a few more years to build it properly. Captain Chen Wimming approached through the rain. His uniform soaked, a wide smile on his usually serious face. The water purification tests came back, Commander. This rain is clean. Better than clean. Some of the mineral content might actually be beneficial for human health. Good news at last, Yara said. How are the agricultural teams progressing? Faster than expected. The soil here is remarkably fertile. Our botanists think we can begin large-scale planting within 6 months. Dr. Okafor is already talking about forests. She wants to plant a forest that covers the entire northern continent. Ara laughed. It was a sound that came more easily now than it had during the war. Tell her she has my full support. We're going to need those forests. We're going to need everything green and growing that we can manage. She looked across the settlement, watching her people move through the rain. Engineers were checking drainage systems. Children were playing in newly formed puddles. Elderly men and women sat under shelters, watching the sky with expressions of wonder. This was what they had fought for. This was what 60,000 years of survival had earned them. Commander, Lieutenant Park Sujin appeared at her side, a communication device in her hand. We're receiving a transmission from the Vorn homeworld. Ambassador Threlvax is requesting a conversation. Yara nodded. I'll take it in my quarters. Have someone bring me dry clothes first. An hour later, she sat in the small room that served as her living space. Facing a holographic projection of the Vorn ambassador, Threlvax looked better than he had on Earth. Some color had returned to his scales, and his eyes seemed less haunted. Commander Okonkwo, he said. Thank you for accepting my call, Ambassador. I hope you're bringing good news. I am, actually. A hint of a smile crossed the Vorn's reptilian features. The Council has approved the establishment of a joint scientific commission. Vorn and human researchers working together to study the technology developed during your exile. In exchange, we will share our knowledge of the galaxy's inhabited regions, including stellar cartography and diplomatic protocols for contact with other species. Yara leaned back in her chair. That's more than we expected. What changed their minds? Your restraint, Threlvax said simply. When you had the power to destroy us, you chose not to. That confused many in the council. They expected vengeance. They were prepared for vengeance. Mercy caught them off guard. And now they're curious. They want to understand how a species could carry such a burden for 60,000 years and still choose peace. They think maybe they can learn something from humanity. Yara was quiet for a moment, considering. We can learn from each other, she finally said. That was always the hope. Not conquest. Not submission. Partnership. It will take time, Threlvax warned. There are many Vorn who still believe we did nothing wrong on Earth. They think we were simply exercising the rights of the strong. Changing that belief will require generations. We know about generational change, Yara replied. We've had some practice. After the call ended, she walked to the window of her quarters. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the 3 moons of New Earth were rising above the horizon. They cast strange shadows across the landscape, painting everything in shades of silver and blue. In the distance, she could see the lights of the settlement spreading across the valley. More structures were going up every day. More humans were descending from the fleet, eager to feel solid ground beneath their feet. The population of New Earth had already reached 50,000. With millions more waiting for their turn, a soft chime announced a visitor. Yara turned to find Dr. Amara Sisay entering her quarters, moving slowly but steadily despite her advanced age. You should be resting, Yara said. The doctors say you need to conserve your strength. The doctors can conserve their breath, Sisay replied with a smile. I didn't survive 300 years to spend my last days in bed. Besides, I have something to show you. She held up a small device that projected a holographic image into the air between them. It showed a document written in the ancient script that humans had used before the exile. What is this? Yara asked. It's the original charter of the generation ships, Sisay explained. Written by the leaders who organized the escape from Earth. I've been studying it since we arrived here, and I found something interesting. She expanded a portion of the document, highlighting a specific passage. Read this section, she said. Yara leaned forward, her eyes scanning the ancient words. The language was formal, the style unlike anything used in modern human communication. But the meaning was clear. Let those who survive carry not only the memory of our world, but the hope of what we might become, she read aloud. Let them build not a monument to the past, but a foundation for the future. Let them remember that the greatest revenge against those who sought our destruction is to thrive beyond their comprehension. She looked up at Sisay and knew. Even then, they knew what we would face. They were wise people, Sisay said. They understood that survival alone wasn't enough. They wanted us to become something greater than what we had been. They wanted us to prove that humanity deserved to exist. Yara turned back to the window, looking out at the growing settlement. Do you think we've proven that? I think we're proving it every day, Sisay replied. Every child who plays in the rain, every seed we plant in the soil, every time we choose cooperation over conflict. The Vorn tried to end our story 60,000 years ago. Instead, they started a new chapter, and it's a chapter that's still being written. 3 months later, the first permanent structures rose on New Earth. They were built from local stone and imported metal, designed to blend with the landscape rather than dominate it. The central building was a hall of memory, where the history of humanity's exile would be preserved for future generations. Yara attended the dedication ceremony, along with thousands of other humans. Representatives from the Vorn Imperium were present as well, including Ambassador Threlvax and several members of the council. It was the first time so many Vorn had visited New Earth, and the first time the two species had gathered for a celebration rather than a confrontation. The hall was filled with artifacts from the long journey. Pieces of the original generation ships, journals kept by early survivors, tools that had been invented to solve problems that no one had ever faced before. And in the center of the main chamber, enclosed in a protective field, the small stone that had traveled across the void and back again. Yara stood before the assembled crowd, humans and Vorn alike, and prepared to speak. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, but she no longer felt crushed by it. She felt supported, lifted by all the generations that had come before. 60,000 years ago, she began, our ancestors fled a dying world with nothing but their ships and their hope. They traveled into darkness that should have killed them. They survived challenges that should have broken them. They kept faith with a future they would never see. She gestured to the artifacts surrounding them. This hall preserves their memory. It reminds us of what they sacrificed so that we could stand here today. But it is not a tomb. It is not a monument to death. It is a celebration of life. It is proof that humanity endures. Her eyes found Threlvax in the crowd. We share this galaxy now. Humans and Vorn and dozens of other species that we have yet to meet. We can choose to live in fear and suspicion, repeating the mistakes of the past. Or we can choose something different. We can choose to learn from each other, to grow together, to build a future that none of us could achieve alone. She raised her voice for the final words. Our ancestors dreamed of this moment. They dreamed of their children standing on a new world under new stars. With the weight of exile finally lifted from their shoulders, we are living their dream. Let us make it worthy of their sacrifice. The crowd erupted in applause. Humans embraced each other, tears streaming down their faces. Even some of the Vorns seemed moved, their scales flushing with colors that indicated strong emotion. After the ceremony, Yara walked alone to the edge of the settlement. The three moons were rising again, painting the landscape in silver light. She could hear music drifting from the celebration behind her, mixed with laughter and voices raised in song. Commander Chen Weiming appeared beside her. He had been promoted to admiral after the war, though he still called her commander out of habit and respect. Is everything all right? Everything is perfect, Yara replied. I was just thinking about what comes next. What do you mean? The war is over. The peace is established. We have a new home. The great mission that defined our people for 60,000 years is complete. She turned to face him. What do we become now? What purpose drives us forward? Chen Weiming considered the question. Maybe that's the point, he finally said. For 60,000 years, we were defined by what we had lost, by the need to survive, by the hope of return. Now we get to define ourselves by what we choose to become. And what will that be? I don't know, he admitted. But I think that's beautiful. For the first time in 3,000 generations, we get to choose our own future. We're not running from anything. We're not fighting for anything. We're just living, growing, becoming whatever we want to be. Yara nodded slowly. You're right. That is beautiful. She looked up at the alien stars that now shone over her home. Somewhere among them was a small yellow sun, orbiting around which was a dead world that had once been called Earth. It would always be sacred ground. It would always be remembered. But it was no longer all that humanity had. Send a message to the fleet, she said. Tell them that tomorrow, we begin the next chapter. We start training new explorers, new scientists, new artists. We start building ships designed for discovery instead of war. We start reaching out to the other species of this galaxy.
Oh.
And what will the message say? Chen Weiming asked. Yara smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. Tell them that humanity has come home. And now we're ready to meet the neighbors. Out above them, the stars burned steadily in the darkness. Countless worlds, countless possibilities, countless stories waiting to be written. Humanity had spent 60,000 years in exile, but the exile was over. The future spread out before them like an ocean, vast and deep and full of wonder. They had survived. They had returned. They had chosen peace. Now, it was time to discover what they would become.